So, you've played Monopoly, right? Probably with your family, in a weirdly intense game that ended in a very adult-level argument over the Park Place property. But did you ever wonder how a game that's basically a glorified real estate scam got its start? Like, who made this thing, and why did they think it would be fun?
Turns out, it wasn't a big company or a game designer. It was a guy named Charles Darrow who basically stole the idea from a board game he saw at a party, and then tried to sell it to a company for a ton of money. But here's the twist. The company he sold it to didn't even want it. They thought it was too boring. So they made a few changes, added some money, and suddenly it was a hit. And that's why today, you're still playing Monopoly, even if it's just to feel like you're rich, powerful, and maybe a little bit like a criminal. So what exactly are we talking about? Let me put it like this: Monopoly is like a board game where you try to make your brother pay rent, but with plastic tokens and a lot of yelling. It's not just about buying property, it's about getting rich, or at least getting someone else to pay you, which is basically the entire point of life. So we're not just talking about a game, we're talking about a game that's been around since the 1930s and has somehow become the most popular board game in the world. And yes, it's still the game that makes your family argue over who owns Park Place, even if you're all adults now. So we're diving into the history of a game that's basically a real estate sim, but with more yelling and less actual money. Alright. Time to get started, because if you're reading this, you're probably already in the game. So yeah, Monopoly isn't just a game, it's like a time capsule of mid-20th century vibes, and you're living in it without even knowing it. It's the reason your aunt still thinks you're 12 and plays with plastic money. You're probably holding a Monopoly piece right now, whether it's a thimble or a wheelbarrow. It's like the game is trying to make you feel nostalgic for a childhood you never had. Or maybe you just like the thrill of pretending you're a wealthy tycoon. And let's be real, the game is basically a social experiment. It's like a dinner party where everyone's pretending to be rich, and you're the one who accidentally bought Boardwalk and now owe $1 million in rent. Monopoly also hides a little bit of history, like a secret message in a bottle. It started as a way to teach economics, but now it's just a reason to throw a party and yell at your siblings for owing you rent. So yeah, you should care, because it's basically a time machine that lets you play with your childhood, and maybe you'll even learn something about money. Or maybe you'll just get really good at yelling at your brother for not paying rent. So, here's the thing: Monopoly wasn't always called Monopoly. It used to be a game called The Landlord's Game, and it was basically like a real estate scam in the 1900s. It was made by a guy named Charles Darrow, who was basically a grumpy old man with a monopoly on bad ideas. The game was actually meant to teach people about the evils of capitalism, but somehow it ended up being the ultimate tool for scamming your friends. You know, just like in real life. It took a while for the game to get its name, and a lot of people had to be convinced to play it. Like, people didn't even want to play it at first because it was too monopolistic. Eventually, a company called Parker Brothers saw potential and bought the rights. They changed the name to Monopoly and started selling it like it was a new kind of magic trick. And it totally was. The game became a cultural phenomenon, and now it's basically the only game that can make people hate capitalism, get angry at their siblings, and lose track of time. It's a masterpiece of lazy fun. So there you have it, Monopoly's origin story, in 60 seconds. Just like a TikTok, but with more property taxes and fewer dance moves. So, imagine a game where you try to be the richest kid in class, but instead of getting allowance, you get money from other kids. That's Monopoly, but it's way more fun than being the rich kid in real life. It's like a board game version of I'm the Boss, but with property taxes and jail. You buy stuff, you rent it out, and then you get kicked out of the game if you can't pay. The idea wasn't just to make money, it was to teach people about economy. But in a way, that's way more exciting than listening to a teacher talk about GDP. And if you ever feel like you're not winning, just remember, you're not the richest kid. You're the kid who's trying to be rich, and that's kind of the whole point. So yeah, Monopoly is like a game where you pretend to be rich, but you're actually just playing a game with your friends. And that's pretty much it. Alright? Let's start with the basics. You need a board, some money, and a bunch of little tokens. It's like setting up a tiny economy in your living room. Who's gonna be the richest? Me, obviously. First thing you do is pick your pieces. There's the thimble, the wheelbarrow, the top hats. It's like choosing a mascot for your financial empire. I'm going with the wheelbarrow. I'm a mover and a shaker. Then you roll the dice. It's like throwing a pair of tiny, unstable rockets into the air. You move around the board, buying properties, paying rent, and trying not to go bankrupt. It's capitalism, but with more stress and less productivity. Once you've got your tokens, money, and dice, you're ready to play. It's like setting up a mini economy in your living room, except instead of paying taxes, you pay rent to other people. Welcome to the game of life, baby. So the game starts with people buying properties, right? It's like a real estate game, but with a lot more yelling and less actual money. Once you own a whole color group, you get a rent bonus, which is basically like getting paid to be rich, but in a game. But here's the catch: if someone lands on your property, you charge them rent, which is like being a landlord but with more drama. And if you can't pay your rent, you go bankrupt, which is the game's version of getting kicked out of the house, but with more dice rolls. The goal is to be the last person left with money, which is basically like winning a game of Monopoly, but with more yelling and fewer actual houses. So here's the real kicker: Monopoly isn't just about buying land and getting rich. It's a sneaky way to teach people about money and greed, but with a twist of chaos and luck. Like a dinner party where everyone's trying to outbid each other for the last slice of pizza. The twist? It's not just about owning property, it's about controlling the game. You can buy properties, build hotels, and even pay rent to other players. It's like being a landlord, but with more shouting and less actual responsibility. Oh, and there's the chance card, those random events that can make you rich or ruin your day. It's like getting a surprise gift from a grumpy Santa who's had too much coffee. But the real genius is the bank. It's not just a place to store money, it's a character in the game. The banker is like a strict teacher who only gives out money if you follow the rules. And if you mess up, you go to jail. So yeah, Monopoly is a game that's been around since the 1930s, but it's still got that wild, unpredictable charm. It's like a party where the rules are flexible, but the stakes are high. And that's the clever twist. It's not just a game, it's a social experiment in wealth, luck, and a little bit of chaos. Now go forth and play. Just don't forget to pay rent. So, Monopoly isn't just a game, it's got some real science in its bones. Think of it like a tiny economy with money, property, and taxes all playing nice together. The board itself is like a map of a fake place with streets and places named after real cities. It's like a game of pretend, but with rules that actually make sense. The dice rolls are like random events in the game, deciding who gets to move and who gets to buy. It's like a gamble, but with more cardboard and less risk. And the money? It's not just paper, it's a system that keeps the game balanced. You can't just print more cash, or the game would fall apart like a pizza with too much cheese. All of this, of course, was made by people who loved games and wanted to make something fun that could be played over and over, like a snack that never goes bad. So imagine you're at a party and someone says, "Let's play Monopoly." And you're like, "Oh no, here we go again." It's like when your cousin insists on telling the same joke for the 10th time. You know the rules, you know the pain, but you're still there because you're curious. Monopoly is basically a game of I'll take that property, you take that property, and then we'll all be broke and still argue about who owns Park Place. It's like a real estate fight, but with more dice rolls and less actual money. The game was made in the 1930s by a guy named Charles Darrow, who basically took a bunch of ideas from other games and said, "Hey, I'll make it my own." Like a DIY genius with a monopoly on creativity. He didn't just make Monopoly out of thin air. He borrowed a few things from the game The Landlord's Game, which was made to teach about economics. So it's like a mix of a serious lesson and a party game, but with more money and less learning. Quick word from our sponsor. If this sounds like something you'd enjoy, take a look at the Kindle Paperwhite e-reader. There's a link and a QR code on screen right now, and in the description below. Alright, back to it. In the end, Monopoly became a cultural icon, like a weird family tradition that everyone tolerates because it's just a game. It's dumb, it's fun, and it's totally worth the headache. Just don't blame me if you end up owning Boardwalk and still can't afford to buy a house. So here's the thing. You think the game is just about buying properties, but it's actually a very specific kind of math. It's not just about money, it's about how much you can make before you go bankrupt. They made the rules so that the game would end in a few turns, not go on forever. If you didn't have a good strategy, you lose quickly. It's like a mini life simulation, but with more dice rolls. The idea was to make it fast-paced and fun, not a long drag. It's like if you had a dinner party, but instead of eating, you're just trading property cards and getting rich. And here's the kicker. They actually tested the game in real life. They had people play it and see if it worked. It wasn't just some guy with a weird idea. It was a real experiment in social psychology. So even though it sounds like a silly game, it was actually built on some pretty smart thinking. It's like a little science experiment dressed up as a board game. So here's the thing. Folks, Monopoly isn't actually a game about money. It's a game about getting your friends to feel bad for you. The original idea was called The Landlord's Game, and it was meant to teach people about the evils of capitalism. Not the fun kind, the "I'm gonna evict you for not paying rent" kind. The game was created by a woman named Elizabeth Magie in 1903. She was like the original game designer, but with more patience and fewer deadlines. She didn't make Monopoly, though. That was a different guy, Charles Darrow, who basically took her game, renamed it, and sold it to a company that thought it was a new idea. So the real story is less about wealth and more about who gets to tell the story. And that's the real Monopoly on the narrative. So here's the thing. People think Monopoly is a rich person game. but actually it's just a giant game of I'm gonna charge you for parking in my driveway. The original game was called The Landlord's Game, and it was made to teach people about how capitalism can be a real pain in the you-know-what. It was even used in schools to teach economics, because apparently some people still think that's a thing. But then the game got commercialized and suddenly it was all about getting rich, not learning about rent and taxes. So the myth is busted, but the game still lives on as a weird mix of education and exploitation. So you're like, Monopoly is just a board game? What's the big deal? Well, guess what? It's hiding in your everyday life. Like when you're at a family game night and everyone's arguing over the free parking square. It's like a tiny war in a cardboard box. Or when you're at a store and they're like, buy one, get one free. That's Monopoly's go to jail in disguise. It's like the game is trying to sneak into your wallet without you noticing. And don't even get me started on the luxury tax and income tax squares. That's like the game trying to tell you, you can't just win by luck, you have to pay for it. It's like a mini economy in a box. Monopoly isn't just a game, it's a way of thinking. It's in the way we talk about money, like I'm broke or I'm rich. It's like the game has become part of our language, sneaking in like a sneaky property developer. So next time you're at a party or a family gathering, remember, Monopoly is hiding in plain sight. It's like a secret agent in a board game suit watching you from behind the dice and the tokens. So here's the real-world example that goes surprisingly hard. Imagine trying to explain Monopoly to a kid who's never seen a board game before, but you're also allergic to any kind of rulebook. You're basically trying to teach a dog how to do calculus. You start by saying, this is a game where you buy properties and pay rent, and the kid goes, wait, is this a robbery simulator? Why is there a jail cell and a free parking space? What's the deal with the orange Monopoly piece? Is that a raccoon? Or is that just a weird way to say you're rich? I'm confused. Then you get to the rules about going to jail, and the kid says, wait, is this a game where you can get locked up for doing nothing? Like, is this a metaphor for real life? Because I feel like I'm already in jail, and I haven't even started. You're trying to explain how the game ends, and the kid says, wait, does this mean I'm supposed to win by being the richest person in the world? But I already have a job and a car. Am I already a winner? Or is this just a way to feel rich without actually having to do anything? I'm confused. Eventually, you give up and just say, just play it, it's fun. And if you get stuck, just throw the dice and hope for the best. That's the whole point, right? To not think too much and just roll with it. So, Monopoly is not just a board game, it's a cultural phenomenon. It's like if a kid built a sandcastle and then the whole beach came to see it. You know, the one with the most expensive house and the most dramatic bankruptcy. It's been sold over 1 billion times. That's more than the number of people who have ever lived on Earth. Like, if you lined up every Monopoly set ever made, it would circle the Earth like a really long, boring necklace. And it's not just about money. It's about greed, luck, and the human love of pretending you're rich. It's like a group project where everyone's trying to win, but no one actually knows how to play. The game has been in the news more than the average person. It's been in museums, sold at auctions, and even inspired a reality TV show. Like, it's got more fame than a rock star. And yet, it still feels like a kid's game, which is kind of the point. It's a silly, chaotic, and oddly addictive simulation of wealth, like a grown-up version of I can buy the whole world with my allowance. So you're playing Monopoly, and suddenly you're broke, and you're not even close to the end of the board. You're like, wait, why am I still here? This is supposed to be fun. The game slows down, and you're stuck in a loop of paying rent, losing property, and trying to buy your way out of a bad decision. It's like being trapped in a time loop with a bunch of greedy ghosts. Your friends are laughing at you, and you're just trying to survive. You start questioning your life choices, like, was this really a good idea? Did I sign up for this? Eventually, you either win or you get kicked out. But either way, you're left with a story, a few regrets, and maybe a new appreciation for the game that got you there. Monopoly is like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're flying, sometimes you're screaming, and sometimes you're just wishing you could get off the ride. So, yeah, Monopoly can be a disaster, but that's part of the fun, the chaos, the drama, and the sweet victory when you finally win. Or when you just walk away with a story to tell. So you think you know Monopoly? Well, let me tell you, the real story's not on the brochure. The game was made by a guy who wanted to teach kids about money, but he didn't realize it would become a family feud. The downside, it's not just about money. It's about the way people play, the greed, the grudges, the I'm not paying rent tantrums. It's like a family therapy session with a dice roll. And let's not forget the pieces. Those little tokens? They're not just plastic. They're symbols of our inner child. The race car is you. The thimble is your sister, and the wheelbarrow is your dad. Oh, and the board? It's not just squares. It's a map of our lives. The chance cards are the surprises, the taxes are the bills, and to go to jail is when you mess up. So yeah, Monopoly was made with good intentions. But now it's a monster. A game that teaches you about money, but also about how to lose your family in the process. So, how did humans even figure out Monopoly? It's like someone asked, what if we made a game where you pretend to be rich, but with fake money and fake property? And then someone said, yeah, let's do that. It wasn't just about money, it was about status, control, and a whole I'm better than you vibe. Like, I own Park Place, you just have a hotel on Boardwalk. They probably had to test it a bunch like, hey, does this work? Let's see if people get angry when they go bankrupt. And then they were like, okay, this is kind of fun, but we need more chaos. Monopoly was originally called the landlord's game and was made to teach people about economics, like, don't be a greedy landlord, but then it got twisted into a game of spite and spiteful property deals. So, in the end, Monopoly was basically a group of people saying, let's make a game that's as complicated and fun as life, but with more hotels and less actual life. Quick word from our sponsor. If this sounds like something you enjoy, take a look at the Amazon Echo Dot Smart Speaker. There's a link and a QR code on screen right now, and in the description below. Alright, back to it. So here's a weird thing. Monopoly used to be called something else. Like, really different. It was called the landlord's game and it was made to teach people about greed and capitalism, not to make them rich. It's like a tax audit in a board game. And guess what? The original game had 28 properties. Not 28. Wait, no, it had 28 properties and 12 community chest cards. But one of the properties was called Park Place and another was called Park Lane. Like, two different places with the same name. It's like having two different parks named Park. But here's the real weird part. Some versions of the game had a rule that if you landed on a property and couldn't pay rent, you could still buy it for free. It's like getting a free house just for being broke. That's the kind of weird edge case that makes Monopoly feel like a game designed by a confused economist. And to top it all off, the original game had a luxury tax card, which was basically a tax on being rich. So if you were already rich, you had to pay even more. It's like a tax on the tax. The game was made by people who love to make life complicated. So yeah, Monopoly has some weird edge cases. Like, it's a game about money, but also about being a tax cheat. And it was originally made to teach people about capitalism, not to make them rich. It's a weird game. So what if we took Monopoly and said, what if we made this game as unfair as possible? Like, what if we just let the richest person win every time? Imagine if the game was like a reality TV show where the rich get richer and the poor get, well, poorer. It's like a capitalist theme park with no safety nets. You'd have one player who just keeps getting more money, and everyone else just gets stuck in the same old hotels and railroads. It's like a never-ending I'm rich, you're not loop. But here's the kicker. If you made it this unfair on purpose, you'd probably have to add a rule that says, you can't win unless you're already rich. That's just how it would go. So yeah, if we abused Monopoly on purpose, we just make a game that's like a metaphor for capitalism, and honestly, it would be super boring to play. So imagine if you had a board game where you could buy your neighbor's house and charge them rent, but instead of a house, it's a toaster. That's basically Monopoly, but with property and money instead of appliances. It's like a very rich version of I Spy where the prize is a lifetime of debt and confusion. Monopoly isn't just about buying things, it's about making other people pay for things you already own. Kind of like if your dad bought the whole town and now charges you rent for breathing. It's the board game version of a pyramid scheme, but with more plastic tokens and less actual money. So in the end, Monopoly is like a very expensive game of I'm rich and you're not, played on a board that's mostly just colored squares and a little bit of luck. So here's the thing, folks, Monopoly is not just a board game, it's a legal battleground. Every time someone plays it, they're basically arguing over who owns the land. Some say it's about wealth, others say it's about greed, and then there's the guy who says it's just a giant game of I own more than you. But really, the real argument is between the original creators and the people who bought the rights. Like, who owns the idea of a monopoly? It's like if you tried to trademark the idea of having stuff, and then someone else tried to claim it was their original idea. And the lawyers? They're just here to make sure no one gets hurt or rich. It's a whole industry of people arguing over who owns the game of life. So here's the real magic trick. Monopoly isn't just a game, it's a trap. You think you're buying property, but you're actually paying rent to the bank. It's like a tax break in disguise, but with more cardboard and less ethics. The creators knew people love to feel rich, so they made it easy to pretend you're a CEO. Just slap a luxury tax on your imaginary empire and watch your friends gasp in envy. But the real genius, they made the game so long, you forget you're just playing. It's like a fake vacation that never ends, but with more dice and less sunburn. And let's not forget the go to jail card. It's not just a punishment, it's a way to make you feel like you're on the edge of a real-life prison. It's like a game within a game, and you're the prisoner. So in the end, Monopoly isn't just about money, it's about making people feel like they're living out a fantasy. Even if it's just a few hours and a lot of Monopoly money. You think you're playing Monopoly to get rich? Nah, you're playing to get bankrupt. It's not about winning, it's about watching your friends squander their money on stupid properties. People always think the goal is to own all the land, but really, the goal is to own the last piece of land and force everyone else to pay you. It's like a big, slow, fake auction. You also think the game is fair? It's not. The game is rigged. The rich get richer, and the poor get more poor. It's like a simulation of capitalism, but with more dice rolls and fewer morals. And don't even get me started on the go to jail square. That's not a penalty, that's a reset button for your soul. You're not in jail, you're in a holding cell for your life choices. Lastly, people think they're playing a game. They're not. They're playing a performance. You're not just moving pieces, you're acting out a 1930s financial drama with a dice-driven plot. So here's this tiny detail that changes everything. The original Monopoly had a different name. It was called The Landlord's Game. Yeah, that's not a catchy title, but it's important because it was made to critique capitalism, not to make you rich. The creators, Charles Darrow and others, wanted to show how money and property can trap people, but the game ended up being about winning, not about making a statement. That's like making a protest sign that accidentally becomes a meme. And here's the kicker. The original game didn't have chance. It was all about strategy. No dice, no luck, just pure skill. That's like playing chess with a friend who's really good at it, but you're not allowed to cheat. But then the game got commercialized. It became a party game, a status symbol, and a way to make money. It's like taking a political statement and turning it into a viral TikTok trend. Pretty much the same thing. So that tiny detail, the name changed everything. From a tool for critique to a toy for the rich. It's a reminder that even small changes can have huge effects. Just like adding a tiny bit of sugar to your coffee can make it taste like $1,000,000. So here's the thing, you think Monopoly is just a game. No, it's a tiny little part of a giant money-making machine. You know what's bigger than the board? The numbers behind it. Let me give you a number that'll blow your mind. The original Monopoly game? It's been sold over 1 billion times. That's more than the population of the whole world. Imagine every person on Earth buying a copy of Monopoly. That's not a metaphor. That's real. And they're still selling them today. So why is this number so important? Because it shows how much people love money, chance, and getting yelled at for not paying rent. In the end, Monopoly isn't just a game, it's a business. And this number, it's the proof that people are willing to pay for a little bit of chaos and a lot of cash. So there's this story about a guy named Charles Darrow who made a version of Monopoly and sold it to a company. But then they sued him because they said he stole their idea. It's like if you copied a recipe and then claimed it was your own. But here's the twist, he didn't actually steal the idea. He just took inspiration from a game called The Landlord's Game that was made by a woman named Elizabeth Magie. She was a feminist who wanted to show how capitalism could be bad. So the real story of Monopoly is kind of like a game of life, but with more money and less fun. It's like if your parents told you were special, but then your uncle said you were just copying them. And to this day, the Monopoly brand is still owned by a company called Hasbro, which also makes things like Scrabble and the Furby. It's like if your childhood toys had a family reunion. So next time you play Monopoly, remember it's not just a board game, it's a story of creativity, lawsuits, and a few people who just wanted to make some money. Or maybe they just wanted to play with money. So here's the thing. No one ever asks why Monopoly is called Monopoly. Like, why is the game named after a company that doesn't even exist anymore? It's like calling a pizza place Domino's because it's a pizza place. It's not just a name, it's a brand, a legacy, a meme. And the original idea was actually called The Landlord's Game. Like, really? That's not a catchy title for a board game. And here's the kicker. The name Monopoly wasn't even the original plan. It was just a way to make the game sound more serious. Like it was about real estate and not just a bunch of people trying to ruin each other's fun. Quick word from our sponsor. If this sounds like something you'd enjoy, take a look at the Apple AirPods 2nd generation. There's a link and a QR code on screen right now, and in the description below. Alright, back to it. So next time you play, remember, you're not just playing Monopoly, you're playing a game that started as a protest, got renamed, and became the most cursed board game in history. And if you're still confused, just ask yourself, why would a game called Monopoly ever be about winning? It's just a big, greedy, sadistic joke. So, Monopoly's got some cool tech now, like digital versions and AI opponents. But the real future? Probably something with blockchain and NFTs. Imagine buying property with crypto and bragging about your virtual empire. But hey, maybe the next version will be a VR game. You could walk around the board, slap your friends, and maybe even get a real-life house for winning. Not sure if that's a win or a lawsuit. Or maybe it'll be a mobile game with augmented reality. You could play with your friends in the real world, but the board is just on your phone. Like a Monopoly game that's also a scavenger hunt. But honestly, the real future of Monopoly is probably just more of the same. People love the nostalgia, the chaos, and the way it makes you feel like a rich tycoon, even if you end up paying for the hotels. So, in the end, Monopoly is not going anywhere. It's just going to keep getting more and more ridiculous. And that's the real win. You're rich, you're winning, and you're probably going to lose a lot of money. But hey, that's Monopoly. So, like, the original Monopoly board had a little dog named Charles, and no one knows why. Maybe he was just a guy with a collar, or maybe he was a mascot for the game's first version, which is basically like a 1930s version of a board game. No one really knows, but it's a mystery that's stuck in the game like a piece of gum on a floor. Also, the original game had a lot more stuff, like a little man in a top hat and a cat. They were probably just extra characters that got cut out because they were too complicated. Or maybe they were part of a bigger story that no one remembered. Either way, it's like a lost episode of a TV show, and no one's watching. And then there's the question, why did they name it Monopoly? It's not like it's a monopoly on anything. Maybe it's a joke about the game itself, like, it's a monopoly on fun, or a monopoly on being stuck in a game for hours. No one knows, but it's kind of the whole point. Also, the original game had a rule that if you landed on a property, you had to buy it, or you could get fined. But no one knows if that was a real rule or just a joke. It's like a rule that got lost in translation, or maybe it was a rule that only existed in the mind of the person who made it. In the end, Monopoly is like a puzzle with missing pieces, and no one really knows why. It's probably just a bunch of people trying to make a game that's fun, and then adding more stuff until it's like a museum of board game history. And that's okay, because sometimes the mystery is part of the fun. Did you know Monopoly was originally called the landlord's game? It was meant to teach about the evils of greed, not just how to cheat your friends out of money. The original game had 28 properties, not 10, and it was actually a protest against the stock market crash of 1929. You're welcome, capitalism. Monopoly was nearly banned in the 1930s because people thought it was promoting greed. They were right. But hey, it's a game, not a philosophy class. In the 1940s, a guy named Charles Darrow made a fake version of the game and sold it to Parker Brothers. He didn't know he was copying someone else's idea. Total rip-off. Monopoly has been in over 100 countries, but it's still called Monopoly everywhere. Even in places where it's not even a real thing. It's a global brand, baby. So we've gone from a board game idea to a full-on capitalist simulator, and let's be real, it's basically a tax audit in disguise. Monopoly is like a board game version of a financial crisis, but with more dice rolls and less actual crisis. Remember when we started? It was just a few squares and some tokens. Now we've got a whole economy, property taxes, and a guy named Charles who's still mad about the original game. It's wild how it evolved. The original idea was to teach people about money, but somehow it became a game where you can go bankrupt and still feel like a winner. It's like teaching math by giving everyone a calculator and telling them to add 1 plus 1. Monopoly isn't just a game, it's a cultural phenomenon. You've seen it in movies, on TV, and even in memes. It's like the game version of a meme, simple but somehow never goes out of style. So to recap, Monopoly was made by a group of people who wanted to teach money lessons, but it turned into a game where you can lose everything and still have fun. It's a bit of a paradox, but that's what makes it so weirdly addictive. Did you know the original Monopoly game was actually called the landlord's game? Yeah, it was a tax protest tool. The creators were trying to show how greedy landlords hurt the economy, not make you rich. The game was made in 1903 by a social reformer named Elizabeth Magie. She wanted to teach people about wealth inequality, not just let them roll the dice and win money. But here's the twist. When Monopoly became popular, the original version was forgotten. The company changed the rules, added more money, and turned it into a capitalist dream machine. So the real Monopoly was a protest game, not a rich person's simulator. But hey, if you want to feel rich, just play the version that actually makes you feel like a billionaire. So there you have it, folks. Monopoly was born from a board game that wanted to be a rich, greedy, and slightly shady capitalist. But hey, it's still fun, right? Thanks for watching, and remember, the only thing you're really winning is the feeling of having a monopoly on your time and attention. If you like this, drop a like, subscribe, and maybe even buy a Monopoly set for your next party. I'm not telling you where to spend your money. And if you're ever in a game and someone tries to cheat, just remember, the original Monopoly was made by a guy who tried to get rich quick, and he didn't win. Stay curious, stay weird, and until next time, may your board game never end and your money always be on the rise. Before you go, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell us in the comments what you'd like us to make next. We read every single one. Thank you so much for watching.
Comment this emoji if you made it to the end.